Daniel Adkins is the CEO of Transnational Academic Group. He joined Transnational Academic Group Middle East in 2009 as a faculty member in the Schools of Business and Information Technology and has led the organization for the past 7 years. Dan spent the first 20 years of his career working in the information technology industry, providing services for companies including IBM, Dell, Clorox, Philips, Hershey's, Coca-Cola, Merck, and Visa. His roles included programming, quality assurance, control, auditing, project management, security, disaster recovery, business continuity, and business processing re-engineering. In addition to being a management consultant, he held numerous management positions, including CIO and CEO. Before coming to the UAE, he worked extensively in the United States, India, Vietnam, the UK, and the Philippines. He started several businesses and has worked in multiple successful startups. Daniel holds an MBA and postgraduate certificate in business research from Heriot-Watt University, along with numerous professional certifications. I'm going to give a quote that you've shared with us, Dan. The world in which you as a student will work in is changing faster now than any time in history, especially driven by COVID-19 pandemic, global issues like the climate change and technology leading to the fourth industrial revolution. To equip yourself for the careers that will be viable in the future, it's essential that you consult professional career counselors who can guide you based on years of experience and the best information available. Dan, I know that you were doing a talk today on careers through COVID and Expo 2021, and this one today has a different message, but I think it's also something that we need to be taking account in. Students that are preparing for that next university journey, preparing their budgets with parents who potentially are really struggling through this pandemic, means that budgets are tight, expenses are high, and our students really want to be supporting their families or even themselves if they're self-funding, and making sure that their dollars, their dirhams take them the journey. So I'm really, really excited to be with you here today. I've already have some messages coming through saying, can I please let you talk? So I will let you talk, Dan. I'm going to pass it over to you. I'm going to switch my camera off, turn myself on mute, but I'm here in the background just to remind everyone, keep your questions coming through the chat box, and we will have a Q&A right at the end.
That's great. Thank you so much, Maria. I really appreciate it. And I thank all of the students and faculty members who are joining today and taking some time out of your day. It really speaks volumes about who you are. There's an expression that successful people do what unsuccessful people are unwilling to do. And the very fact that you're willing to take time out of your free time to do something to improve yourself and to improve your knowledge speaks volumes about your opportunities for success going into the future. So with today's topic, I'm taking a slightly different tack, because talking just about how to budget during university, while important, is just a subset of the larger concept of how do you budget for your life? How do you make not only your parents' money go the distance while you're in university, but how do you make your money go the distance in the rest of your life? And some of you might be thinking, why do I need to be thinking about financial planning when I'm still in high school? And it really all comes down to, how hard do you want your life to be, especially when you're in your 40s and older? You can make decisions right now that will impact how hard you're going to have to work, how difficult and how much struggle you're going to have to deal with when you're in your 40s and 50s and certainly in your retirement age. So I want to start with a concept that to me is probably the most important thing that you can understand about budgeting and planning your financial future. And as we go through, then we'll get into toward the end some very specific details on budgeting that you can apply now, you can apply in university, and you can apply throughout your life. But the concept I want to start off with, and I want to get you excited about, is the concept of owning your life. Now, when I say own your life, what I'm talking about is the idea that you don't owe anything to anyone, and you have enough money that you could live out the entire rest of your life in a way that would be comfortable for you, that you'd feel good about, without having to work another day. And that's a really powerful concept. And it's something that, unfortunately, very few people achieve. It's something that probably 10, maybe 12% of the world will ever achieve. But it is something that everyone on this call can achieve. And the process for getting there actually isn't that difficult. It's not that complex. It's all about actually doing it. I want to use the COVID pandemic as an example to explain the power of this concept. So, when the COVID-19 pandemic started, people all over the world were worried about coming down with an infection that could, if it didn't kill them, end up causing life-altering changes, including causing strokes and heart attacks and things like that. Very scary disease. And the safest thing by far would be to stay home, not go out for anything until the pandemic passes or until you can get vaccinated and be safe that way. If someone is living paycheck to paycheck, if someone doesn't own their life, then they had to be worried about losing their job. And a lot of people did lose their jobs or get furloughed during the pandemic. And they had to be worried about their pay being cut because a lot of companies decided the way to balance their budget and to achieve the profit margin they wanted to was to do it on the backs of their employees by cutting their employees' salary. And employees were forced to come into the office and work or go to work wherever their job was, even though there was no vaccine, there was still a great chance of catching the virus. And if they didn't want to come into work, they would just become another one of those people who were fired. But for someone who owns their life, they're not worried about losing their job because they didn't need it in the first place. They're not worried about pay cuts because they didn't need the money. They're doing what they do because they love doing what they do. And if they get money for it, well, that's just a nice bonus. And if they felt like their employer was asking them to put themselves at physical risk in order to boost the company's profit line, they would simply say, no, I'm going to take the next 2 years off or however long it is till the pandemic's done, keep myself safe. Imagine the power that you would feel if you could do that. And even beyond that, when you own your life, it gives you the ability to speak truth to power. Samuel Clemens, the author who wrote under the name Mark Twain, once said, only the dead may tell the truth, meaning that only people who were dead could actually say the truth about what was going on in the world because everybody else had to be worried about losing their job or things like that. Well, those who own their life can tell the truth because they don't have to be worried about losing their job or their income. They don't need it. They truly own their future. I want all of you to make this your goal, to have that level of freedom because it makes all of the difference in the world. So think about it. I bet all of you would like to retire with $1 million US. If you retire with $1 million US, you can live out the rest of your life in comfort. Most people retire 60, 65 range. You can live out the remaining 20 or 30 or even 40 years of your life in reasonable comfort with $1 million US. So if that's your goal, and it's not a bad goal at all, and it's a goal that unfortunately less than 20% of the world's population will ever achieve. But if that's your goal, then all you need to do is make one simple commitment today. And this is something that definitely applies when you go to university and actually can even apply today. So if you want to be a millionaire when you retire at your age, all you have to do is forego one Starbucks a day, one venti coffee a day, and put that money at the end of every month into an investment account and don't touch it until you retire. Even if you do nothing else in your life other than this, you will retire a US dollar millionaire. So I want all of you to make a commitment to yourself today that as soon as you start earning money, or even if people are giving you money now as allowance, you will put the cost of a venti coffee from Starbucks in an interest paying account every single day without fail and never touch it. And by the time you are 60 years old, you'll have $1 million US. And you'll be watching other people walking down the street with the Starbucks coffee going, yep, I'm drinking my million, but you'll have yours. So with that, I thank you for your time. Oh, wait, maybe you don't want to have to wait till you're 60 to be financially secure. Well, then we better talk about how do you do it faster? If you want to own your life, you have to understand that it all comes down to hard work. Those who are truly successful know that you have to live a few years of your life like most people won't, so that you can live the rest of your life in a way most people can't. When you ask anyone who's worked with me, from the time I started working delivering newspapers and taking care of people's yards at 8 years old till today, they will tell you that I'm the hardest working person they've ever met. Now, at this stage of my life, I don't have to work as hard as I do because I don't have to work at all. I do it because, like nearly all successful people, it's not about the money. That's just a side effect. It's about doing something that I love, doing and accomplishing what I believe to be worthwhile goals. And many people talk about, well, I don't want to have to focus on money. When I get older, when I grow up, I want to be happy. Absolutely. Psychological studies have continuously shown every time they're done that the key to happiness is working on goals and accomplishing goals that you believe are worthwhile, and even more importantly, that they benefit someone beyond yourself. If you want true happiness in life, don't focus on happiness. Definitely don't focus on money. Happiness and money are merely side effects. Focus on doing something that you love, that causes you to work on goals that you believe are worthwhile, that make a difference in the world, and that help others beyond yourself. And you know what? You'll find happiness and you'll find money because you're focusing on the right thing. And this is one of the places where talking with a professional career counselor can make a difference, because you can talk to them about what is it that I'd be doing? How would it make a difference in the world? And by doing that, you can find something that will truly motivate you and give you that kind of happiness and success. So I want to share with you what I mean by this, and I want to do it by using an example from my own life and help you understand how to get to the point where you can own your life and you can apply these same concepts and thoughts and practices while you're in high school, while you are in university, while you're doing internships in university, and then in your career afterwards. So I'd mentioned at 8 years old, I started every day delivering the newspaper. And during the summer, mowing people's lawns, and during the winter, shoveling their snow. And then when I got a little older, when I was 12, I was able to get on a cleaning crew where I helped clean offices after the employees had left during the day. And I also was able to get another paid under the table job as a dishwasher. And of course, when you're on a cleaning crew, or when you're a dishwasher in the kitchen, which is kind of the bottom of the stack, you also get to do something I did a whole lot of in my life. I spent a lot of time cleaning toilets, really glamorous stuff. Then when I was 15, there was a major hailstorm in the state I lived in. And I spent an entire year doing roofing, replacing the roofs that were damaged, and also working construction, doing everything from pouring concrete foundations to building up the frames of houses, plumbing, wiring, tiling, the whole 9 yards. Then I finally turned 16 and was able to get a normal legal job. And I started working at Burger King, was a burger flipper. And I also managed to get a second job as a waiter at a restaurant. And then later gave that one up and took on the really glamorous job of being the person who changed the tires on people's cars at an auto shop. And of course, throughout this entire time, I was also doing door-to-door sales, selling everything from candy bars to little pencil sharpeners that looked like antique cars to ready-to-eat meals that were made for the astronaut program to books. Whatever I could sell, I was out there selling. Now, I did this every single one of these jobs while I was still in school, before I graduated high school. Throughout my life, from the time I was 8 until the time I graduated high school at 16, I was working about 20 hours a week on something to provide income. And then after I turned 16, still before I graduated high school, I was working 40 hours a week while finishing up the last year of my high school. And if you'd ask me during any one of these jobs, I would have told you, I have the greatest job in the world. Let me take Burger King, for example, because a lot of people look down on burger flippers. And I didn't see it that way. When I went to work for Burger King, the way I saw it, I was providing food for people who were really busy. And by doing that, I was allowing them to get the food that they needed without having to go to the grocery store, without having to cook, without having to clean up afterwards. I was saving them time, which allowed them to do the things in their life that were really important, that helped them to succeed and to fulfill their goals. By doing that, I was making the world a better place. So it was worthwhile work. The same thing when I was at the auto shop changing people's tires. I was putting on new tires, which was protecting them from having a blowout, maybe even dying in a car accident from a tire blowing while they were on the freeway. And I was even helping fight global warming because properly inflated new tires make a vehicle get better fuel economy, therefore puts less carbon dioxide in the air, less global warming. So I was making people safe, I was saving them money on fuel, and I was helping protect the environment. And it was the greatest job in the world. Every single job I've ever had, I could see why it was the greatest job in the world, because I figured out what about it was worthwhile. How did it fit into the larger picture of everything that was going on in the world? You should do the same thing, not only with your work, but even with your school. Even when you're doing your schoolwork or your university work, figure out how it's worthwhile, how it figures in to the bigger picture. And instead of feeling like drudgery and something that you don't want to do and feeling miserable, you'll be excited about it and you'll have energy to do it. Who wants to live their entire life being miserable, thinking they've got a dead end job? Find what's worthwhile and you'll have the greatest job in the world. Now, all of this I did before I graduated. After I graduated high school at 16, just about to turn 17, I was able to go and get my first job at a Fortune 500 company. And it was really glamorous. I pushed around a big metal cart about 3 times the size of this one with computer printouts stacked up on it, little post-it notes stuck to them that said whose desk they went to. And me and another guy had responsibility for 2 5-story towers. He took one, I took one. Now, we were supposed to make our rounds every single hour, and it was supposed to take us an hour to distribute all of our printouts. I came in on my weekend, the very first weekend after I started working, and I walked around in that building almost 8 hours, and I memorized where every single desk was in that building. So the next day when I went to deliver my reports, instead of taking an hour, it took me about 15 minutes. And I came back to where we got our reports from. Now, I could have just sat around and done nothing, but that wasn't my goal. I walked over to the next room where the printer operators worked, and I said, how can I help? And the guy's like, oh, well, you could go grab me some boxes of paper. So I started going and getting paper, and he showed me how to load the machine. So I'd load the printer paper in the machines. And then later he showed me how to unload the machines and eventually how to run the console. And over time, a very short time, I got to where I could do his job. So when he needed to take a break to go to the bathroom or to eat lunch or even take a day off, I was there and I'd cover for him. And then an opening came up for a printer operator. Well, guess who they gave it to? The person who was already doing the job. So I worked really hard and got as fast as I could at doing the printer operation. And I walked next door to the tape operation center. And I asked how I could help. And I started helping out and learning their job. And very soon, the opportunity arose because they had an opening. And guess who they gave it to? The person who was already doing it. So I got really fast at doing that and walked next door to the operations center. And in the operations center, I learned how they did their job and covered their breaks and their days off. And when a job came up in the operations center, who did they give it to? Then from the operations center, I walked next door and started talking to the people in production control, learning how they would take the printouts that I used to distribute from the printer, balance them, make sure they were accurate, put the little labels on and put them on the cart for somebody to take around. And I started helping out there. And when a job opened up there, guess who got it? Then I went over and started talking to the programmers and helping them out when they were having problems, even fixing things in the middle of the night so that they didn't have to come in. And when a job opened up in programming, guess who got it? Some kid who had started off pushing a cart, who didn't even have a college degree, managed to, in a period of 3 years, get 6 promotions and go from making $5.50 an hour hourly rate to making over $40,000 a year on salary. Every step of the way, I went above and beyond. And if you do that in your studies, at high school, at university, and then do that when you're in internships and when you're in your career, you can move ahead. And eventually, I became the head of a team. This is a picture back when I used to have hair of a team that I led at a Fortune 500 company where we managed to save the company by reducing their cost by 40% so that they could remain competitive. And it allowed me to then go and work for the companies that Maria listed off when we first started. Throughout this, I worked on average 60 hours per week for the first 15 years of my career, with the 4 most successful years working about 80 hours a week. And just as before, I kept learning the next job and moving into more and more responsible positions, including, as you heard, being a chief information officer and a chief executive officer. And when I was 38 years old, I retired and I owned my life. I could do essentially anything I wanted for the rest of my life. So to have fun in my retirement, I began teaching in universities so I could share the knowledge I had gained with the next generation to help you be more successful. And now, as the CEO of a company overseeing 2 university campuses, just like before, I'd tell you, I've got the greatest job in the world. Hard work is a huge part of being successful, but there are 2 other secrets, because as Warren Buffett said, one of the richest people in the world and actually the world's greatest philanthropist, he's given away more money than any other human being that's ever lived. He said, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you'll work until you die. So I want to share with you the 2 secrets that will help you make money 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the great thing is, you don't have to wait until you finish university to do this. You could start doing some of these things right now, just coming up with the right ideas and implementing them. And you could certainly do these during university. In fact, some of the greatest success stories in the world, people like Bill Gates or Zuckerberg, did exactly this. So let me share with you the keys to success. And the keys to success are OPT and OPM. And no, that is not opium, the drug. We're not talking about that. It's almost impossible to become truly wealthy without using these 2 tools. So what are OPT and OPM? It's other people's time and other people's money. So let's look at how these work. So let's take your time. Let's say that you're like me, you can work 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. That means that you can put in 112 working hours a week times 52 weeks in the year. That's 5,824 working hours a year. And let's say that you're making a decent rate of $50 an hour, you'd be clearing $291,000 per year. That's good money. That puts you in the top 0.5% of all wage earners in the world. Not bad. But if you're already working 16 hours a day every day of the year, how much more can you work? You can't. If you try and work more than that, you'll eventually burn out and probably suffer a mental breakdown. So let's talk about using other people's time. In most countries, by law, the most you can have people work for you is 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. That means 40 hours of work every week. And let's say that you employ 20 people to do that. So now you've got 800 working hours per week times 52 weeks. That's 41,600 working hours a year. Now, of course, you're not going to get $50 an hour for each of those hours like you would for your own work, because you have to pay the people that work for you. But the way business works is you pay people less money than you earn from them working for you. So let's say that you make an override of $10 an hour. That means you make $416,000 per year. Now, if you're employing 20 people and making $10 per hour from each of them, how many more can you afford to employ? There's no limit. You can keep adding more. And that's what companies have done. That's why companies like Microsoft now have over 100,000 people working there. Now, what this means, of course, is being an entrepreneur, running your own business. And no matter what line of work you eventually decide to go into, you can add being an entrepreneur with that. As Maria likes to call it, you can have a side hustle, which is great. Or you can figure out a way to be an entrepreneur within that career field that you're in. Start up a new business within that field and become very successful that way. Now, that isn't to say you won't be working 16 hours a day. You will. You have to remember, you don't own the business owns you. But you won't mind, and you'll want to do it, because if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. I love what I do, and I do it even if they weren't paying me. That's the kind of position you want to get into. So that's OPT. Let's talk about OPM. So maybe you don't feel up to being an entrepreneur. Maybe you don't like managing people. That's fine. You can still use OPM. So let's say with your money, maybe you've saved up 500,000 dirhams from being frugal about your spending and from having a good career. And let's say that a flat currently costs about 500,000 dirhams and rents out for 65,000 dirhams a year. So you buy the flat, and taking out the cost of maintenance, you're making 65,000 per year, roughly. That's not bad. That's a nice little side income. But let's look at the other side of using other people's money. You still have the 500,000 dirhams. A flat still costs 500,000 and rents for 65,000. You set up a company and you take out a loan from the bank and you buy 10, because a bank will loan on property with 10% down to a company. The payments work out to 50,000 per year for each apartment. So that means that you're making 15,000 per year per apartment, or 150,000 per year. Now, if you're doing it with your money, you could buy a second flat in year 8, assuming that you don't spend any of the profits and the cost of flats doesn't increase. And then you'd be able to buy another flat 6 years after that, in year 14. not making a whole lot of progress. With other people's money, you can buy 3 more flats at the end of the first year, another 3 at the end of the second year, 4 at the end of the third year, and so on. Now, of course, this is simplified to show the point, but it really does work this way, even when you account for the interest or profit margin on the loan and the opportunity cost of purchasing with your own money. But of course, making money isn't the only thing required to be wealthy. You have to keep it too. And here I'm going to go into something that is going to be very important for you in budgeting for university and making sure that you make the best use of your parents' money while you're there. So Calvin Coolidge, former American president, said there is no dignity quite so impressive and no one independence quite so important as living within your means. So first and most importantly, you have to understand that people who are truly wealthy live within their means. If you owe more money than you can pay off immediately or by selling assets, you are essentially a slave to your creditors. And if you don't have enough money that you could live out the rest of your life in a way that you'd like without having to work, you're essentially a slave to your employers. One of the most common ways people waste money is by buying needless things out of habit. Assuming you have the average Starbucks addiction, if you simply save that money, as we showed you before, you could end up being a US dollar millionaire. I think you should note that Starbucks is a $9 billion a year business. You don't get rich by drinking expensive coffee. You get rich by selling it. So why do people who do have opportunity in life stay poor? It's because of a basic attitude issue. You see, rich people stay rich by acting poor, and poor people stay poor by trying to act rich. And if you simply look at people like Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or Steve Jobs, you'll see that that's true. You know, Warren Buffett, in the top 5 richest people in the world, he still lives in the house he bought back in the 1960s. He still drives a very conservative car, doesn't own any jets or anything like that, and he's worth nearly $100 billion. So I want to give you a real life example. One of my colleagues who makes somewhere about 35% of what I make drives a very nice car, bought new, cost about 235,000 dirhams. I, on the other hand, who was able to retire when I was 38, drive a Cherry Tiggo that I got new because of the warranty and the maintenance, and it cost me 78,000 dirhams all in. Now, if you took a typical 5-year lifespan of owning a vehicle, my colleague is spending 161 dirhams a day just for the payment on the vehicle, where for me, it's 53 dirhams a day. And actually, because I keep vehicles until I've completely worn them out, it's actually more like 21 dirhams per day. Can you see the difference that would make? And think about it, during this pandemic, in the past year, I've probably taken my vehicle out 15 times in a year. So if it's going to be just sitting in a parking space doing nothing, does it make more sense to be paying 21 dirhams a day or 161 dirhams a day? It's the same thing with clothes, watches, phones. Every little bit of it adds up. So how do you live within or actually below your means so that one day you'll be truly free? And this applies absolutely when you're going to university and trying to conserve the money that your parents are giving you. They worked hard for that money, and the best thing you can do is to be respectful of it and get the most out of it. So, how do you live below your means and still enjoy yourself? Well, one of the first things you need to do is to track your spending. You need to keep track of every dirham you spend, and you'll be amazed at the end of the month where the money goes. So, what you do is every day, any money that you spend, no matter how small, you record it in a log, and at the end of the month, you total it up. Now, if you really want this to work well, every month, share that list with someone whose opinion you actually value. Maybe your parents, maybe a friend, but somebody whose good opinion you really value. And because you will not want to be ashamed of wasting your money, you'll ensure that you keep your spending in line. Then you, sorry, then you need to create a budget that is well within your means. And you do this by starting off with how much money you want to save every month. Remember, we made a commitment at the start of this session to save the cost of a Venti Starbucks every day. So you're looking at saving about 21 dirhams every single day. So you've got to take that out of your budget to start with. So after you subtract that from your income or from what your parents give you, you use what's left for your budget, and you make sure that you do not spend more than is in the budget. I went through a time when I first was living on my own. I was living on my own my last year of high school because my parents moved to another state. I was living in a very cheap apartment. I could not afford electricity, so I was in the dark. And thankfully, I was working at Burger King, so I got free meals there when I was working. And other than that, I had to live on generic hot dogs and generic ramen noodles because I usually only had between $3 and $5 every week that I could spend on food. No matter what it takes, you live within that budget, even if it means you eat ramen for a week in order to keep within your budget. You don't touch your Starbucks million. You've got to remember that you pay yourself first and you never touch that money except for a life threatening emergency. Then you need to eliminate any unnecessary expenses. You buy only when you must. You buy for quality, not for brand. Buy used wherever possible and use everything until it absolutely wears out or the maintenance cost becomes unreasonable. Then you look for ways to increase your income, whether it's doing a side hustle, whether it's OPT and OPM that we just talked about, or whether it's learning the next job up so that you get that promotion. You make sure that you are constantly working to increase your income. And then you avoid lifestyle inflation. As you increase your income, you let your savings rise to meet your income, not your expenses. See, generally, when people get a raise or a promotion, their salary goes up above their expenses and they feel good for a month or two. But then they start going out to eat more often or buying more expensive food, or they go buy new clothes or a new car. And pretty soon their expenses and their income are the same again. And they're again living paycheck to paycheck and not setting aside anything for the future. Wealthy people, as soon as they've established a baseline that they can live at reasonably comfortably, I'm not talking living luxuriously, they have a minimalistic baseline they can live with. Every single dirham that they get in increases and promotions and bonuses goes straight into their savings because they know someday they want to own their life. You need to pay off your debts as quickly as you can. If you have any debts, get them paid off. Einstein is rumored to have said, those who understand compound interest earn it, those who don't pay it, or the Sharia compliant version of profit margin. You do not want to be paying for using other people's money unless that money is generating more income from you than what you're having to pay. You've got to make sure not to compete with other people. Remember, poor people stay poor by trying to look rich. You're not competing with other people. You're only competing with your goal to eventually own your life. And remember, no matter how much money you have, you're not rich if you spend more than you earn. It's important to remember that the best investment you'll ever make is in yourself. Remember Warren Buffett, one of the richest people in the world, he knows investments. He's in fact the only person in the top 10 richest who made their money off of investing, not off of starting a business. Too many people in this world do not make the investment in themselves by going and getting a higher education, by setting up a side hustle, by doing all of the things necessary. And successful people will tell you, don't be upset by the results you didn't get with the work you didn't do. Too many people get upset because they think they're entitled to success. No one is entitled to success. To succeed, you have to invest your money and your time and your energy into making yourself more valuable. You have to invest in yourself until other people see what you've become and feel comfortable investing in you. But the words here are not the end of Buffett's quote. He actually tells us how to invest in ourselves. He says the best investment you can make is an investment in yourself. The more you learn, the more you earn. To be successful, we must invest our time and our money in learning. If you want to see how to become a CEO, look at what CEOs do. They're constantly learning across many disciplines because they know they have to be generalist and they also have to have current knowledge. Of course, there are many other things you need to learn to be the most effective at becoming successful. You need to learn things about time management and goal setting and personal development and entrepreneurship. You need to work with a professional careers counselor and figure out what you need to study at university and with Coursera and edX and Udacity in order to achieve your career goals. Because by doing these things and by being careful with your budget and always living below your means, you can someday own your life, and then you can go out and do anything that you want to do and do things that truly feel worthwhile to you and make a difference in the world. And because of that, you will be truly wealthy and truly happy. So with that, I'll stop and be very happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Wow, Dan, I'm just like, what a talk. What a talk. What an incredible conversation we just were part of. There was a question here saying, but how do we manage a budget when we're going to university? So I know you mentioned all these little tips. I think what we're struggling with is like the how do we really do it at university?
Okay, so when you are going to university, you can go to the university's website and you can get a list of all of the fees that are associated with the university, your tuition and your books and housing, all of that. You can get estimates of the cost of food and transportation and put all of that together and determine how much money you're going to need to go to university. I'd suggest you put a little bit of buffer on top of it because unexpected things always do happen, a buffer of maybe 5%. And then remember, your budget isn't a target. You're not trying to spend 100% of what's in your budget. That's not the way it works. The budget's the upper limit. So you write out your budget, you sit with your parents and make sure that it's something that will work with them. You might find that maybe you do have to get a side job or an internship and help pay some of it. You keep that budget written down and you track your spending every single day against that budget. and make sure that you never go over. And like I said, sometimes that means that if you went out and splurged on pizza on the weekend, you're eating ramen the rest of the week so that you get your food budget back in line. But you have to commit to yourself and to your parents, short of an actual emergency, you're not going to go over that budget. And then out of that budget, try and save as much as you can. Try and set that aside. And if you can, go out and get a side hustle, get a paid internship, get any kind of job so that you can start earning some money. Do that. But don't add that money to your budget unless your parents weren't able to give you enough to get through university. Take all of that money and put it directly into your savings. And then just keep doing that all the way through your career. So making a budget and sticking to it isn't the hard part as far as how do you do it. The hard part is the willpower to do it. And the best way to help yourself have that willpower is make a commitment to every month, or if you need to, every week, share your progress on your budget and your spending with someone whose opinion matters. And because you won't want to be embarrassed or ashamed of overspending, you'll keep yourself in line. So use that social pressure, the peer pressure for your own benefit instead of it working against you.
Such great tips, such great advice. And I think the hardest part of it all, would you agree, Dan, is actually doing it and just not listening to what your friends are doing and kind of comparing your lifestyle to someone else. It's really having what you said right at the beginning is how do you want to live your life when you get to your late 40s and early 50s? Thank you so much, Dan. This was such an important conversation to be having, such an important conversation to be sharing with students across the country. That was Dan Adkins. Daniel Adkins is the CEO of Transnational Academic Group. And today he was talking to us about many things in different rooms. But in this room right now, we just finished having a conversation where Daniel took us through his life story and his journey and his own experience, both at work and in his life, on how you can save money to really enjoy life over the long scale of your life and to thrive as you move forward. Thank you so much, Daniel. I'm really conscious of your time today, but thank you for being here today.
You're most welcome. And thank you so much, Maria, for setting up such an incredible event for all of the students. Really appreciate it.